The heavy rain drummed relentlessly against the black umbrellas surrounding Martha's open grave. The priest delivered a somber eulogy, but the freezing wind snatched his words away. I stood there, 74 years old, staring down at the polished mahogany casket that held my wife of 48 years. The police had officially called it a tragic accident. They stated that the brakes on her 1998 Volvo had simply failed on the steep curves of Miller's Pass. But Martha was a retired corporate auditor. She calculated every risk and never left anything to chance. As the first shovel of heavy earth hit the casket, I felt a sharp vibration in my coat pocket. I pulled the device out, shielding the glowing screen. The caller ID flashed a name that made my pulse quicken. Victor Thorne. He was the executive director of the private wealth management firm, where Martha had worked for 3 decades. I turned my back to the biting wind and answered, "Victor." I whispered, "We are burying her right now, Harrison." Victor's voice came through breathless and completely lacking his usual composure. "Listen to me very carefully. You need to leave the cemetery right this second. Get to my downtown office immediately. Do not tell a single soul where you are going." I opened Martha's private lockbox. I found something. "Harrison, you are in immediate catastrophic danger." My blood ran absolutely cold. "Victor, what are you talking about?" I demanded. "What exactly did you find?" "I cannot discuss it over an open phone line," he stammered. "Just get here. Do not tell your family. Do not trust anyone. Just come." The line went dead. I stood frozen on the wet grass. "Do not tell your family." The words echoed in my chaotic mind. I scanned the large crowd of mourners, searching for my son, Derek. He was 42 years old, the boy I had sold my $5 million engineering firm to support when his real estate business hit rock bottom. He was supposed to be standing right beside me, holding his wife Natalie's hand. But Derek was nowhere to be found. Natalie was standing near the back, but her husband was missing. I did not wait for the priest to finish. I quietly slipped away from the gravesite and got into my truck. Victor's frantic warning replayed in my head. Martha never believed in coincidences, and now, neither did I. The drive to Victor's downtown office felt like an agonizing eternity. The windshield wipers frantically beat back the downpour. I thought about the last few peculiar weeks, the missing financial statements, the strange, hushed phone calls Derek had been taking in the middle of the night. The way Natalie had insisted on pouring my morning coffee with an artificial smile. I had brushed it all off as grief, but Victor's phone call ignited a dark, terrifying suspicion in my stomach. I pulled my truck into the dimly lit, underground parking garage of Victor's high-rise building. I took the executive elevator directly to the 14th floor. I stepped out, my boots squeaking softly against the polished marble floor. Victor's corner office was at the very end of the hall. As I turned the final corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. My breath hitched. I pressed my back against the cold, plastered wall. There, standing directly in front of Victor's heavy oak door, was a tall figure in a dark raincoat. The man was holding a heavy steel crowbar, desperately trying to wedge it between the door and the reinforced frame. I slowly leaned forward to get a better look. The man turned his head, frustrated by the stubborn lock, and the dim hallway light caught his features perfectly. It was Derek, my own son. The boy whose massive corporate debts I had paid off just a few years ago, sacrificing my own retirement dreams to save him from financial ruin. Instead of mourning his mother, he was here, using a crowbar to break into the office of the exact man who had just warned me that my life was in severe danger. "Derek," I said. My voice was barely a rough whisper, but it sounded like a crack of thunder. He froze instantly. The heavy steel crowbar slipped from his gloved hands and clattered violently against the marble floor. He turned around very slowly. His face was entirely pale, his eyes wide and severely bloodshot. For a second, I saw something in his expression that I had never seen before. Pure, unadulterated panic. But then, the panicked mask vanished, his face crumpled perfectly. His shoulders heaved dramatically, and he let out a choked, guttural sob. "Dad!" he cried out, his voice cracking with manufactured sorrow. He stumbled forward and threw his arms heavily around my shoulders. He buried his face in my wet coat, weeping uncontrollably. I stood there stiff as a wooden board, my arms hanging uselessly at my sides. As he clung to me, desperately performing the role of the broken child. All I could hear was Victor's terrified voice, warning me of immediate danger. "What are you doing here, Derek?" I asked, my tone completely flat. "You are supposed to be at the cemetery." He pulled back, wiping his wet face. "I know, Dad," he stammered, his chest heaving. "I just could not take it." Watching them lower her casket into the freezing ground broke me. I had to leave. I drove around blindly until I ended up here. You ended up here with a heavy steel crowbar, actively trying to break into Victor Thorne's private office. I pressed, keeping my hardened eyes locked firmly on his. "Do not lie to me, Derek." He shook his head frantically. "I am not lying, Dad. It is about Mom. A few weeks ago, she told me she kept a private journal, a family diary. She said it had stories about my childhood, things she wanted to pass down to my future kids. She told me she kept it secure in her personal lockbox inside Victor's office safe." He took a ragged breath. When I called Victor this morning to ask for it, he was completely dismissive. He told me the safe was company property and I had absolutely no legal right to it. I just wanted something of hers to hold on to today. I was not trying to steal money. I am so sorry. I lost my mind with grief. I looked at him closely. The tears streaming down his cheeks looked incredibly real. His voice held the perfect pitch of a broken, grieving son. 5 years ago, Derek came to me in tears just like this. His commercial real estate business was on the brink of total collapse. He was facing brutal bankruptcy. Martha and I had spent 30 grueling years building my structural engineering firm into a company worth over $5 million. It was our entire retirement fund, but he was my son. So, I sold the firm, I paid off his massive crippling debts, and injected the remaining capital into his company to keep him afloat. I believed I could easily fix his broken life, too. I desperately wanted to believe that the sobbing boy standing in front of me now was just hurting. "Put the crowbar away," I said quietly. He nodded quickly, eager to grab the heavy tool. "I am sorry, Dad, I really am. I should go back. Natalie is probably terrified." "Yes," I said, keeping my expression entirely neutral. "Go back to your wife. Go home, Derek. Do not do anything else stupid today. I will personally speak with Victor about the diary." "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. He hugged me one more time, testing my resolve. As he walked quickly past me toward the elevator bank, I carefully watched his reflection in the dark glass panels. His slumped posture straightened almost instantly. The weeping ceased entirely. He stepped into the elevator. The heavy metal doors slid shut, and I was left entirely alone. I turned my attention back to the heavy oak door. The polished wood around the brass lock was splintered from Derek's desperate efforts, but upon closer inspection, the door was actually slightly ajar. Derek had not needed to break in. He was just frustrated by a secondary manual deadbolt, or perhaps he had already finished whatever sinister task he had meant to do inside. I pushed the heavy door open. I stepped into the dark reception area. "Victor," I called out, moving cautiously. "Victor, it is Harrison, I am here." There was absolutely no answer. I walked past the empty receptionist's desk and entered his private inner office. The room was freezing cold. The large mahogany executive desk was completely cleared off. I looked over at the corner, where the heavy fireproof steel safe was permanently embedded into the reinforced wall. The heavy metal door of the vault was swung wide open. Victor Thorne was nowhere to be found. Whatever dangerous secret my wife had taken to her grave had just driven her boss into hiding, and my own son was desperately trying to destroy the evidence. I turned around, left the building, and prepared to step back into the viper's nest I called a home. I unlocked the front door of my sprawling estate and pushed it open, stepping out of the freezing storm into the artificial warmth of the foyer. The house smelled faintly of sweet cinnamon and roasted chicken. I peeled off my soaked wool coat, hanging it on the brass hook by the door. As I walked down the hallway, Natalie emerged from the spotless kitchen. She was wearing a soft gray cashmere cardigan, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. Her eyes were artificially red around the rims, a masterclass in performative grief. "Harrison," she gasped softly, rushing toward me with her arms extended. "We were so worried. Derek told me you had to leave the cemetery early. Are you all right?" I let her embrace me. Her expensive floral perfume filled my nose. It took every ounce of self-control not to push her violently away. "I am fine, Natalie," I said, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. It was just too much for me. I had to get away for a while. Oh, you poor thing, she cooed, giving me a look of deep fake sympathy. Derek is upstairs lying down. He is absolutely devastated. Come sit in the kitchen. I made you something warm. I followed her into the brightly lit room. On the center island sat a steaming ceramic mug and a thick stack of stapled legal papers with a sleek silver pen resting precisely on top. Sit down, she urged. I brewed your absolute favorite chamomile tea, and I hate to bring this up right now, but the funeral director sent over these release forms. I slid onto the stool, my eyes fixed sharply on the mug. Small tendrils of steam rose from the pale liquid. The frantic words from Victor's phone call flashed in my mind. Do not trust anyone. They need your signature tonight, she explained, her voice dropping to an apologetic whisper. It is just standard paperwork to finalize the burial plot and release the funds to the church. Derek tried to handle it, but they need your direct authorization. I brought the cup close to my face, inhaling the scent. Beneath the sweet, earthy aroma of the chamomile, there was a faint, chalky, medicinal undertone. I lowered the mug without taking a single sip. Let me just look these over, I said, adopting a flawless look of mild confusion. Oh, bother, I seem to have left my reading glasses in the truck. Natalie gently tapped the papers with her manicured fingernail. You do not even need to read them, Harrison. It is all standard legal jargon. Just sign at the bottom. I cannot sign anything without my glasses, Natalie, I insisted. I brought the papers closer to my face, squinting hard. Through the deliberate squint, the bold black letters at the very top of the first page came into sharp focus. The document was titled, Comprehensive General Medical and Financial Power of Attorney. My heart pounded against my ribs. By signing this document, I would be legally declaring myself mentally unfit. I would be granting my son Derek irrevocable control over my healthcare decisions, my physical property, and the entire $6 million family trust fund. Derek could legally sell this house from under my feet and lock me away in a secure care facility before the weekend was even over. They were actively trying to erase me. I needed to destroy the documents immediately. I shifted my weight on the stool, fumbling with the papers awkwardly. As I reached forward to grab the silver pen, I let my elbow strike the side of the heavy ceramic mug with intentional force. The cup tipped over instantly. The scalding hot laced tea flooded across the kitchen island, immediately swallowing the stack of fraudulent documents. Natalie shrieked loudly, jumping back as the hot liquid ruined the crisp pages. Oh, I am so incredibly sorry, Natalie, I gasped frantically, grabbing paper towels. I clumsily dabbed at the soaked documents, actively ensuring I smeared the dark ink across the page. My aging hands just betrayed me. Natalie stood there in utter silence, her jaw clenched so tightly. A small muscle ticked visibly near her left eye. She took a jagged breath. It is absolutely fine, Harrison, she said, her voice seething with barely suppressed rage. It was just an accident. I will have the funeral director print a new set tomorrow. Head upstairs to bed now. I nodded meekly and slowly made my way up the hardwood stairs. I walked into the large master suite. I did not turn on the lights. I simply took off my shoes, climbed onto the mattress, and sat quietly in the suffocating darkness. Around midnight, I heard the heavy thud of Derek's footsteps coming up from the basement, followed by the soft murmur of his voice, blending with Natalie's in the kitchen directly below my room. They were whispering. My thick wool socks perfectly muffled my footsteps as I crept out of my bedroom. I moved down the hallway and reached the staircase. He ruined the papers, Derek, Natalie was hissing. He knocked over that stupid tea on purpose, I swear it. He knows something is wrong. Keep your voice down, Natalie, Derek snapped. You are being paranoid. He is 74 years old, and he just buried his wife. He is confused, clumsy, and half-blind. He is exactly where we need him to be. Well, where we need him to be is in a locked-down facility. She fired back. We are running out of time, the loan sharks called again. They are giving us until the end of the month. If we do not wire them $2 million by the 30th, they are going to show up at our front door. My chest tightened painfully. $2 million. He had gotten involved with dangerous, violent people, and he was using my entire life savings to buy his way out. I will handle the money, Derek said. You just need to handle the old man. The doctor is coming on Friday at exactly 4 o'clock. We only have a few days to make sure his medical evaluation is completely convincing. I am trying, Natalie argued, but the tea trick is too slow. What if he refuses to eat what I cook? Then stop playing games with the tea, Derek commanded. Just double his dosage. Crush the pills directly into his oatmeal in the morning. Put it in his soup at dinner. I do not care if it melts his brain faster. The doctor needs to see a man who cannot even remember his own name, let alone manage a $6 million estate. I stood completely frozen on the staircase. They were intentionally feeding me powerful antipsychotics, trying to artificially induce the symptoms of severe dementia. They wanted to turn me into a helpless shell of a man, so a corrupt doctor would declare me legally incompetent. I turned around and silently crept back up the stairs. I had less than 1 week to save my very own life. The sun rose the next morning, casting a pale, cold light through the sheer curtains. I had not slept a single minute. The paralyzing grief of losing Martha had been replaced by an icy, calculated instinct to survive. I spent 2 tours in Vietnam building bridges under the cover of darkness. The military taught me that panic is a luxury you simply cannot afford. Patience and precision are your only true weapons. I knew I could not confront Derek and Natalie right now. I had to become the helpless, declining old man they desperately needed me to be. I slowly got out of bed, purposely leaving my hair uncombed. I shuffled down the stairs, dragging my feet against the hardwood. When I reached the kitten, Natalie was standing by the stove. She turned around with a bright, manufactured smile. "Good morning, Harrison," she chimed in. "Did you sleep well? I prepared a nice warm bowl of oatmeal for you." I stared at her blankly for a long moment, allowing my mouth to hang open slightly. "Where is Martha?" I murmured, keeping my voice raspy. Natalie's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Oh, Harrison," she cooed. "Martha passed away, remember? We had the funeral yesterday. You just need to sit down and eat." She guided me to the island stool and placed a steaming ceramic bowl in front of me. Next to the bowl sat a small plastic cup containing my daily blood pressure medication, but there were 3 new, unmarked white capsules mixed in. I stared at the pills, letting my hands develop a severe, visible tremor. "What are these?" I asked, my voice quivering perfectly. My hands shook so violently that when I reached for the cup, I knocked it over, spilling the pills. "Oh goodness, let me help you," Natalie sighed, dripping with irritation. She scooped the pills back into the cup. "Those are your new vitamins. Take them with your oatmeal. I need to go upstairs and wake Derek." She marched out of the kitchen. The moment she was out of sight, my trembling hands became completely still. I moved with swift, silent precision. I reached into the pocket of my pajama pants and pulled out 3 white peppermint breath mints. I scooped up the 3 unmarked pills from the counter, shoving them deep into my pocket for later. I placed the mints into the cup alongside my blood pressure pill. Then I grabbed the bowl, walked silently over to the sink, and dumped the entire portion of thick oatmeal straight down the drain. I flipped the switch for the garbage disposal, violently grinding away the poisoned breakfast. To make it look convincing, I grabbed a spoon, smeared a tiny bit of the remaining oatmeal residue around the edges of the bowl, and set it back on the island. When Natalie returned 10 minutes later, she glanced at the empty bowl and cup. A look of profound satisfaction washed over her face. "Good job, Harrison," she praised me. "Now why do you not go sit in the recliner and watch some television?" I spent the entire day staring blankly at the television, playing the fool. When night finally fell, I waited until the clock struck 2 a.m. The house was completely silent. I dressed quickly in dark clothes, bypassing the alarm doors. I crept down into the unfinished basement. I forced a small egress window open and squeezed my shoulders through the narrow opening, pulling myself out into the cold grass. Moving through the dark trees, I had a secret meeting that would change absolutely everything. The crisp night air bit harshly against my face as I navigated the dense woods behind my property. I walked nearly 2 miles through the underbrush to reach the desolate county highway. Earlier, using a prepaid cell phone hidden in my garage, I had managed to contact Victor Thorne. He gave me an address for a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. I pulled my coat collar up and hurried across the empty parking lot. I found room 12 at the back of the building. I knocked 3 times, paused, and knocked twice more. The door cracked open, and a tired, bloodshot eye peered out. The door swung open, and I stepped into the musty air of the cheap motel room. Victor quickly locked the door. I barely recognized him. The powerful man who usually wore suits was standing before me in a wrinkled dress shirt, his face covered in pale stubble. He looked entirely broken. "Thank God you made it," Victor breathed out. "I did not know if they were actively watching your house. I feared you were already trapped." I took a deep breath. "I am out, Victor, but I do not have much time. They think I am sedated, but I must return before sunrise. Tell me what you found in my wife's safe." Victor walked over to a small table under a dim lamp. On top of the table was a battered leather briefcase. He clicked the locks open with shaking fingers. "Harrison, I need you to brace yourself," he said softly. "When you sold your firm to bail Derek out, you thought he had made poor real estate investments. That is what he sold to us, and that is what we bought." Victor laid a stack of manila folders flat under the yellow light. But Martha was the sharpest auditor I have ever employed. She noticed glaring irregularities in the quarterly reports Derek was submitting to the family trust. She decided to do a quiet, independent audit of his business accounts. I stepped closer to the table, scanning the dense spreadsheets. What did she find, Victor? Victor let out a long, heavy sigh. "Derek is not a failed real estate developer, Harrison. He is a highly successful money launderer. These documents prove that he set up a complex web of offshore shell companies to wash dirty money for an extremely violent criminal syndicate. The loan sharks he owes money to are cartel associates." I stared at the papers, completely stunned, and worse, Victor continued. "He used your family trust as the ultimate clean front. For the past 2 years, he has been quietly draining your $6 million retirement fund to cover his massive losses. The horrific reality washed over me. My son was a ruthless criminal who had risked the lives of his own parents to serve a criminal empire. Every smile, every family dinner was nothing but a calculated performance to keep us blind." I felt a sudden urge to vomit. "He stole everything," I whispered. "He stole much more than your money." "Harrison," Victor said, handing me a thin red folder. Inside was a printed email and a detailed calendar printout. Martha documented every single shell company, every forged signature, and every illegal wire transfer, Victor explained, tears welling in his eyes. "She built an airtight criminal case against your son. And she bypassed the local police entirely." The email was addressed to a senior agent at the FBI. The subject line read, "Urgent evidence of severe wire fraud and money laundering." It was sent exactly 3 days before she died. Victor placed a shaking hand on my shoulder. She had an official appointment to hand over this exact briefcase to the FBI in federal court. That appointment was scheduled for the very morning she drove her car off the cliff. Derek did not just cut her brakes to stop an audit. He murdered his own mother, because she was exactly 48 hours away from sending him to federal prison. I stood perfectly still in that damp motel room, the printed email slipping from my trembling fingers. Murdered. My wife was murdered by the boy she had carried in her womb. I expected my knees to buckle under the crushing weight of sorrow. But the tears did not fall. The grief evaporated, replaced by a cold, quiet, and terrifying stillness. A dark, calculated rage settled over my mind. I looked up at Victor. His eyes were wide with genuine fear as he watched my expression change. "There is more, Harrison," he whispered. "I need to tell you about the police investigation." I nodded slowly, my jaw clenched. "Tell me everything, Victor." Victor pulled another folder containing bank statements and a printed background check. "It is about Detective Mitchell. When her car went off the cliff, Mitchell was the lead investigator. He officially signed off on the mechanical failure report, ruling out foul play." I stared at the photograph of the officer who had stood in my living room. "How did Derek get to him?" "Mitchell has a severe gambling addiction," Victor revealed. "He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to an illegal sports betting ring. Derek knew this. 2 days after your wife's car was pulled from the ravine, a massive wire transfer of exactly $100,000 was deposited into an offshore account, registered to Mitchell's brother-in-law. The next morning, Mitchell closed the investigation. He sold his badge and your wife's justice for 100 grand. The sheer mechanics of the betrayal were staggering. My son had orchestrated a flawless execution. He had identified the one person who could expose his crimes, hired a mechanic to sever the brake lines, and preemptively purchased the investigating officer. He had built an absolute fortress of lies. Victor watched me closely. "Harrison, what are we going to do?" "We cannot go to the local police. Mitchell will intercept any report we make. If we go to the FBI without absolute proof of the murder plot, Derek will know. He will have you committed by Friday. We are completely trapped." I picked up the email, placing it into my coat pocket. "We are not trapped, Victor," I said quietly. "Derek thinks he is dealing with a senile old man. He has forgotten who raised him. He has forgotten what I did before I sat behind a desk." I turned toward the door. "You stay hidden, Victor. I am going back to play my part. Let them think the drugs are working. Let them think they have won." I stepped out into the freezing night, walking to the edge of the motel parking lot. Under the flickering neon sign, I pulled out my prepaid cell phone. I punched in a number I had memorized decades ago. The line rang 3 times before a deep, gravelly voice answered. "Garrett," I said, staring into the dark highway. "It is Harrison Ward, Harrison," the voice replied, softening slightly. "I heard about Martha. I am so sorry. I do not need your sympathy right now." "Garrett," I said flatly, "I need your skills. I need the man you were in the jungle." Garrett Cole was an old military buddy, a man who had served alongside me in the absolute worst combat zones. After the military, he became a highly specialized private investigator, handling deep corporate espionage. "What do you need, Harrison?" Garrett asked, immediately shifting into a hardened, tactical cadence. "My son murdered my wife," I told him, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "He bought a local police detective to cover it up. And now he is actively drugging me to steal my estate. I have 72 hours to build a steel trap and catch them all. I need you here by morning. Bring everything you have. Consider it done," Garrett replied. I hung up the phone. The sadness was entirely gone now. I turned toward the dark woods, completely ready to return to the viper's nest. I slipped back through the basement window, just as the first gray light of dawn began to bleed over the horizon. My aging muscles ached from the bitter cold, but my mind was relentlessly sharp. I crept up the stairs and slipped back into my bed. When Natalie came in a few hours later with another steaming bowl of laced oatmeal, I played my part perfectly. I stared blankly at the wall, knocked my spoon onto the floor, and rapidly discarded the toxic pills the very moment she turned her back. By 10 o'clock, Derek and Natalie were dressed in somber black clothing. They coldly told me they were attending a memorial luncheon hosted by Martha's friends from the country club. Natalie gave me a condescending pat on the cheek, locked the front door, and their luxury SUV pulled out of the driveway. The moment the sound of their engine faded, the helpless facade dropped entirely. I moved quickly through the house, unlocking the back patio door. 5 minutes later, a shadow detached itself from the tree line. Garrett Cole stepped onto the porch. He wore dark, stealthy clothing and carried a heavy black canvas duffel bag. His face was weathered, deeply lined with the hard miles earned in the worst corners of the world. We did not exchange pleasantries. There was absolutely no time for small talk. He stepped inside, dropped the heavy bag onto the hardwood floor, and unzipped it. The bag was filled with high-grade surveillance equipment. He handed me a small schematic pad and asked for the exact layout of the house. I pointed out the kitchen, the main living area, and Derek's private home office on the second floor. We went to work with the silent, practiced efficiency of men who had done this 100 times before. Garrett started in the kitchen. He unscrewed the plastic faceplate of the smoke detector above the island, carefully splicing a microscopic camera lens into the wiring so it would draw constant power from the house grid. He positioned it perfectly to capture the granite countertop where Natalie prepared my food and crushed those terrible pills. Then we moved to the living room. Garrett embedded a tiny audio transmitter inside the base of a heavy brass floor lamp near the sofa, a spot where Derek frequently sat to make his evening phone calls. I watched Garrett work, deeply admiring his incredibly steady hands. He moved like a ghost, leaving absolutely no trace of his physical presence. The real challenge was Derek's home office. The room was tightly locked, but Garrett picked the heavy brass deadbolt in less than 10 seconds. We stepped inside. The room smelled powerfully of expensive scotch and fine leather. A massive oak desk dominated the center of the space, carrying 3 large computer monitors. Garrett went straight for the tower unit sitting on the floor. He pulled a small black USB drive from his pocket, knelt, and plugged it directly into the back of the machine. He explained in a low whisper that the program would silently copy every single keystroke, every deleted file, and every hidden folder, instantly transmitting the massive data directly to a secure server he had set up in his van miles away. While the computer rapidly transferred the data, Garrett climbed onto a leather chair to swap out the air conditioning vent cover, replacing it with an identical one that housed a wide-angle, high-definition camera. We were moving on an incredibly tight schedule. Garrett's device beeped softly, indicating the data transfer from Derek's computer was nearly 60% complete. We had been in the house for barely 40 minutes. They were supposed to be at the luncheon for at least 3 hours, but the universe rarely respects a perfect tactical plan. Suddenly, the harsh, unmistakable crunch of gravel echoed from the driveway. I froze. I stepped quietly toward the window and peeked through the heavy wooden blinds. Derek's black SUV was parked haphazardly near the front steps. He was entirely alone. Natalie was nowhere in sight. The heavy thud of the front door slamming shut violently shook the floorboards. "He is inside," I hissed, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. "The data transfer," Garrett whispered back, his eyes glued to the glowing progress bar on the screen. "It needs 2 more minutes. We cannot pull the drive now, or it will corrupt the entire file system." Heavy, angry footsteps thundered on the stairs. Derek was not just walking. He was storming up the steps, and he was screaming. I could hear his voice echoing off the walls, laced with pure, unadulterated panic. "I told you I need until Friday." Derek roared into his cell phone. "Do you think I am lying to you? The old man is basically a vegetable. The doctor is going to sign the papers, and the money will be yours. Just call your dogs off." The heavy footsteps were finally at the top of the stairs, heading straight for the office. Garrett quickly yanked the drive from the computer with a split second to spare. There was absolutely no time left to run. I grabbed Garrett tightly by the shoulder and shoved him roughly toward the large walk-in storage closet, situated just behind Derek's massive oak desk. We threw ourselves into the cramped, dark space, pulling the louvered wooden door shut just as the brass doorknob to the office violently turned. The heavy oak door swung open, smashing forcefully against the drywall. Garrett and I stood shoulder to shoulder in the pitch-black closet, both of us scarcely daring to draw a breath, as Derek paced the room like a caged animal. He barked desperate, trembling promises to the merciless killers on the other end of the line. Derek's voice vibrated through the thin closet door, betraying exactly how deep in the criminal underworld he truly was. Garrett and I stood frozen in the stifling darkness, the air growing thick in our lungs. We listened to the heavy thud of Derek pacing back and forth across the rug, just inches from where we hid. He slammed his fist violently against the solid oak desktop, causing the room to shudder. "Give me until Friday," he growled into the receiver, his breath ragged. "The doctor will sign the medical power of attorney, and I will have unrestricted access to the trust. You will get every penny I owe you, just do not come near my house." He ended the call with a sharp press of a button. We heard the clinking of crystal as he poured a massive measure of scotch, drank it in one rapid gulp, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Garrett and I waited for 10 agonizing minutes in total silence before carefully creeping out of the closet and escaping the house. I retreated to my bedroom, locked the door, and answered the call. It was Garrett. His voice crackled over the secure line, humming with a tense, electric energy. He had spent the last 24 hours relentlessly hammering against the firewall of Derek's home server. "I finally cracked the main vault," Garrett said, the rapid clicking of a keyboard echoing loudly. The keystroke logger caught him, logging into a hidden administrative account late last night. Once I had the passphrase, I bypassed the local network firewall and established a secure remote tunnel directly into his hard drive. I am inside his entire digital life right now, and what I am seeing is absolutely staggering. I sat on the edge of my bed. Tell me what is in there, Garrett. It is a massive financial graveyard, he muttered. He is running a sophisticated international laundering operation. I am looking at spreadsheets detailing massive wire transfers to offshore accounts. He set up dozens of dummy corporations. And the worst part is how he funded the initial infrastructure. He used your family trust as the primary collateral to open the offshore credit lines. Keep digging, Garrett, I urged, my voice steady despite the rage boiling in my chest. Check the deleted files. People like Derek always think dragging a file to the trash bin makes it disappear forever. You are reading my mind, Garrett replied. I am running a deep recovery scan on the unallocated space of his hard drive right now. Wait, give me a second. Garrett stopped speaking. The rapid clicking of his keyboard suddenly ceased. The silence stretched out thick and heavy with anticipation. Garrett, what is it? I demanded, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles throbbed. He had a secondary hidden partition on the drive, Garrett continued. It is a completely isolated directory. There are no financial documents in here. It is just a single, lonely folder tucked away in the darkest corner of his server. It is an audio file, Harrison, just one single MP3 recording. But it is the file name that has my attention. My heart hammered against my ribs. Read the name, I ordered, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. The metadata shows it was created exactly 4 days before Martha died, he explained. The file is titled, Mechanic D'Esprit, play it. I ordered. I heard Garrett click his mouse. A harsh burst of static hissed through the small speaker, followed by the heavy rhythmic thrum of background noise. It sounded like an auto repair shop. Then a voice cut through the industrial hum. It was Derek. His tone was casual, laced with a terrifying arrogance. Look, I do not care how you do it, Derek said, his voice crystal clear. Just make sure it is completely untraceable. I am paying you a premium for a clean job. A second voice grunted in response. This voice was raspy, thick with a lifetime of cheap cigarettes. It is a 1998 Volvo, the mechanic replied. I can weaken the primary fluid lines. Once she hits a steep incline and rides the pedal, the pressure will blow the seals completely. She will not have any stopping power. Good, Derek responded without a single beat of hesitation. He was discussing the cold-blooded murder of his own mother with the same casual indifference he used to order a cup of coffee. Cut the brake lines on the Volvo. Make it look like old age, wear and tear. My mother drives it to the hills every Sunday. Just get it done. The recording clicked off, leaving nothing but the dead, heavy silence of my locked bedroom. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the edge of the mattress, my chest heaving. A guttural, agonizing sound tore its way out of my lungs, a primal cry of absolute devastation. The son I had built an empire for had ordered the assassination of the woman who gave him life. And he did it for money. The tears stopped falling. The grief completely evaporated. In its place, a dark, terrifying clarity settled over me. I stood up from the bed. I picked up the phone again. Do not be sorry, Garrett, I replied. My voice was steady now. The tremor was entirely gone. Keep that audio file absolutely secure. Back it up on 3 different servers. Print the bank statements showing the deposit he made to that mechanic. Print the offshore accounts, the crypto ledgers, everything. I want a massive mountain of physical evidence ready by tomorrow night. Are we still waiting for the doctor on Friday? Garrett asked, clearly eager to burn the house down right now. Yes, I answered, my tone leaving absolutely no room for debate. They want to trap me in a corner and strip me of everything I own. But the gloves are completely off now. Friday is Judgment Day, and I am going to be the judge, the jury, and the absolute executioner. He will pay for this. Thursday arrived wrapped in a suffocating tension. I spent the entire day confined to the living room recliner, staring vacantly at the muted television. My performance had to be flawless. I let my head loll slightly to the side. Natalie passed by several times, casting sneering glances. She did not bother to hide her utter contempt. At lunch, she served me lukewarm soup, aggressively stirring in the crushed haloperidol right in front of me, assuming I was too far gone to comprehend. I smiled a vacant, toothy smile, waited for her to walk away, and dumped the toxic mixture into a plastic bag hidden under my blanket. I was a man trapped behind enemy lines as the sun began to set, Derek returned home. He simply walked past my chair and headed straight for the liquor cabinet. Shortly after 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Natalie rushed to open it. I recognized the authoritative tread of the boots stepping into the foyer. It was Detective Mitchell, the very man who had stood over my wife's grave and lied to my face. I remained perfectly still, keeping my eyes fixed on the television as they moved into Derek's private study. The heavy oak door clicked shut. I waited exactly 3 minutes, then slipped out of my recliner and crept up the stairs to my locked bedroom. I pulled the burner phone from beneath the floorboards, plugged in my earphones, and connected to the secure audio feed Garrett had established. The microscopic microphone hidden inside the air conditioning vent picked up the conversation with terrifying clarity. "Well, everything is set on my end," Mitchell said. "The paperwork for the accidental death ruling is permanently filed in the county archives. Nobody is ever going to open that case again." "I appreciate that, Mitchell," Derek replied smoothly. "You will get the second half of your payment deposited by Monday morning. But right now, we need to focus. Tomorrow is the most critical day. We cannot afford a single mistake." Mitchell grunted. "Tell me exactly how this is going to play out." "I am putting my badge on the line." "He is not going to put up a fight," Natalie chimed in. "I have been pumping him full of high-grade antipsychotics all week. His brain is completely fried. He is just a drooling vegetable." "Even so," Derek interrupted, "we have to make sure the legal framework is completely bulletproof. That is why the doctor is arriving at exactly 4 o'clock tomorrow. I paid a premium to get a psychiatrist who understands discretion. He will conduct a brief evaluation. Once he sees the old man's symptoms, he will officially declare him an immediate danger." I listened to my son calmly detail my destruction. "Once the doctor signs the medical evaluation," Derek continued, "the blanket power of attorney becomes completely active. I will have total legal control over his medical decisions, his property, and the $6 million family trust. Then the private medical transport team will take him directly to the lockdown ward at the Oak Ridge Psychiatric Facility." "And where do I fit into this performance?" Mitchell asked. "You are my insurance policy," Derek stated coldly. "You will arrive at 3-5 in full uniform. Your presence will provide the official police authority required for an involuntary extraction. If the transport team questions anything, you authorize physical restraints. You will ensure he goes quietly into that van." Mitchell chuckled. "You are putting your own father in a padded cell to get to his checkbook. Does it not bother you even a little bit?" There was a brief silence. I foolishly hoped to hear a single shred of hesitation from the boy I raised. "He had a good run," Derek finally answered, "but he is a dinosaur. By tomorrow night, he will be locked away in a room where nobody will ever listen to him again, and I will be a very wealthy man." I pulled the earphones out. I had less than 24 hours to prepare the absolute ultimate counterattack. Friday morning broke with a deceptive stillness. I carefully rolled out of bed. I reached into the hidden seam of my travel bag. Garrett had left me a micro earpiece designed for deep cover operatives. I pushed it deep into my right ear canal until it was completely invisible. I tapped the small transmitter taped to my ribcage twice. "I have you on audio," Garrett whispered. "The perimeter is fully established. I have 2 unmarked surveillance vans parked down the street. I am sitting with Special Agent Vance from the Federal Bureau. They are treating this as a high-priority takedown. They are just waiting for my signal." I ruffled my hair, untucked my shirt, and shuffled out of the bedroom, dragging my left foot. I entered the kitchen. Natalie was dressed in a sharp black dress. She did not bother with the laced pills this morning. She believed the accumulated dosage was already more than enough. Around noon, Derek finally emerged from his office, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. He looked like a man preparing to accept an award. He watched my vacant, unblinking stare. Derek slowly walked over to my chair and crouched down. "Do not worry, old man," Derek whispered, a triumphant smile stretching across his face. "You will be in a nice padded room soon, and I will take good care of your money. It will be like a long, peaceful sleep." He patted my cheek, stood up, and walked out of the room whistling a cheerful tune. My hands remained perfectly still in my lap, but my mind was a raging inferno. "Hold steady, Harrison," Garrett's voice cut through. The federal agents in the van are practically foaming at the mouth. We have enough to put him away for 3 lifetimes. Just let the trap snap shut completely. We need the corrupt doctor and the detective in the room. At 2:00 p.m., Derek laid out the thick medical evaluation forms the corrupt psychiatrist would sign, and the comprehensive financial power of attorney that would strip me of my life savings. Target 1 is approaching, Garrett's voice crackled. Detective Mitchell is walking toward your front door now. The doorbell chimed. Derek pulled it open. Mitchell stepped inside in full uniform, his brass badge catching the afternoon light. Is the package ready? Mitchell asked. Derek gestured toward me. He is completely docile. When the doctor gets here, we run through the questions quickly, sign the papers, and the transport team will load him into the van. Mitchell waved a hand in front of my face. I just stared straight through his chest. He really is gone, Mitchell muttered. Exactly at 4 o'clock, Dr. Eris Thorne arrived. The corrupt psychiatrist walked into the living room and took a seat on the velvet sofa directly across from my recliner. He opened his sleek leather briefcase and extracted a silver fountain pen. Harrison, he said, his voice incredibly soothing. Your family called me here today because they are deeply concerned. Can you tell me what day of the week it is? I kept my head lolled to the side. I let out a low guttural moan, mumbling a string of completely incoherent syllables. Natalie stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the doctor's shoulder. It breaks my heart to see him like this, she whispered. We simply cannot provide the level of round-the-clock care he desperately needs. Dr. Thorne nodded gravely. It is my professional medical opinion that he poses an immediate and severe danger to his own safety. He is profoundly incapable of making rational decisions. Derek handed the thick stack of legal documents across the table. If you could just sign on the dotted lines, Doctor. The transport team is waiting just around the corner. The room fell silent. Dr. Thorne took the documents. He uncapped his silver fountain pen. Derek took a step closer, his eyes locked hungrily on the tip of the pen. Mitchell rested his hand on his duty belt. The silver pen hovered just a fraction of an inch above the crisp white paper. The trap was perfectly set. The bait had been taken. As the dark ink kissed the signature line, I sat straight up in my chair, my spine snapping rigid, and locked my eyes directly onto Derek's face with terrifying clarity. Before the ink could bleed into the fibers of the paper, I completely shattered the illusion. I sat straight up in my leather recliner, throwing off the heavy blanket. My spine snapped rigid. The slack expression I had worn for days vanished, replaced by a cold, commanding glare. I wiped the trail of saliva from my chin and took a deep breath. The suffocating fog of the victim was entirely gone. I was no longer the prey. Before you sign that, Dr. Thorne, you might want to look at the screen, I commanded. My voice was the deep, authoritative baritone of a man who demanded absolute obedience. The effect on the room was instantaneous. Dr. Thorne flinched violently. The silver fountain pen clattered onto the coffee table, ruining the fraudulent documents. Natalie gasped in pure terror and took a stumbling step backward, clamping both hands over her mouth. Derek froze entirely. His triumphant smile melted into a pale mask of sheer panic. Detective Mitchell instinctively dropped his hand to his service weapon holster. What is happening here? Dr. Thorne stammered. He is having a lucid episode, Derek blurted out, desperate to regain control. It happens sometimes with severe dementia patients. Just ignore his ramblings and sign the papers. Doctor, please. I slowly pulled out the remote control for the massive 85-inch television mounted above the fireplace. I did not break eye contact with my trembling son. You are right about one thing, Derek, I said, my words dripping with absolute venom. I am experiencing a moment of profound clarity. I have never seen things more clearly in my entire life. I pressed the power button. The heavy black screen roared to bright life. I pressed a second button. Syncing the television to the secure server, Garrett was operating outside. The massive screen cast a harsh white light across the terrified faces in my living room. The image was crystal clear video footage captured 2 days prior. It was an overhead angle of the kitchen island. The room fell into a dead silence as the video began to play. There, larger than life, was Natalie. She was humming a pop tune, holding a marble rolling pin. Beside her sat a steaming bowl of my morning eggs and a plastic cup holding 3 unmarked white capsules. The hidden microphone picked up the audio flawlessly. The sound of her humming echoed loudly through the surround sound speakers. Everyone watched in paralyzed shock as Natalie smashed the capsules and ground them into a fine dust. Her recorded voice rang out from the television, cruel and dripping with malice. "Oh, you are completely gone, are you not?" she mocked. "An entire life of building buildings, and now you are just a useless idiot sitting on my floor." The video showed her scraping the toxic white powder directly into my breakfast. I clicked the remote, freezing the frame on Natalie's face. I turned my attention back to the trembling psychiatrist. "That white powder she was crushing into my food, Dr. Thorne, is a drug called haloperidol," I stated clearly. "She was deliberately feeding me 50 milligrams every single day. Tell me, doctor, what does a massive dose of an antipsychotic do to a perfectly healthy 74-year-old man?" "You were about to sign a document declaring me insane, based entirely on the symptoms of a lethal poison that my son paid to have administered. You are standing in the middle of a massive federal crime scene, and you are holding the murder weapon." Derek suddenly broke from his paralyzed stance with an animalistic shout. His face twisted into a grotesque mask of desperation as he lunged across the rug. He clawed frantically at the cables behind the flat screen, desperate to rip the power cord from the wall. "Shut it off!" he screamed. "Shut that damn thing off right now. You stupid old fool." I watched his pathetic struggle with the detached observation of a judge. My thumb rested firmly over the remote. "You are right, Derek," I said effortlessly. "I am an old fool. I was foolish enough to believe you loved your mother. But my eyes are wide open now." I pressed the next button. The video of Natalie vanished. A harsh burst of static hissed through the speakers. Then the undeniable audio recording began to play. The rhythmic thrum of the auto repair shop filled my living room. I watched Derek freeze. "Look, I do not care how you do it," my son said casually. "Just make sure it is untraceable. I am paying you a premium for a clean job." The blood drained completely from Derek's face. The raspy voice of the mechanic replied, detailing exactly how he would weaken the fluid lines of my wife's Volvo. And then the final, unforgivable nail was hammered firmly into the coffin. "Cut the brake lines on the Volvo," Derek's recorded voice commanded with absolute indifference. "Make it look like old age wear and tear. My mother drives it to the hills every Sunday. Just get it done." The audio clicked off. Dr. Thorne collapsed onto the sofa, gasping for air. Natalie fell to her knees, sobbing in pure terror, but Detective Mitchell did not cry. Panic seized his mind. He unsnapped his holster. "Do not even think about drawing that weapon, Mitchell," I warned. But the corrupt detective began to pull the heavy pistol, preparing to shoot his way out. He never got the chance to raise the barrel. A tremendous crash shattered the stillness. The solid wood front door of my house was violently kicked off its hinges. It splintered inward with a deafening roar. Simultaneously, the reinforced glass of the back patio doors shattered as a heavy battering ram smashed through. The house was instantly flooded with heavily armed tactical personnel. They poured into the living room, a highly coordinated tide of dark body armor and assault rifles. At the head of the assault team was Garrett Cole, Federal Bureau of Investigation. A commanding voice shouted, "Drop the weapon right now. Get your hands in the air. Drop it." Mitchell hesitated. Garrett closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed Mitchell by the wrist and twisted it violently. The service weapon clattered to the floor. Garrett slammed Mitchell hard against the drywall. The metallic click of steel handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists sounded like the sweetest music I had ever heard. Across the room, 2 federal agents tackled Derek to the ground. Natalie was sobbing hysterically, surrounded by officers. I remained seated, watching the flawless execution of absolute justice. The storm had finally broken, and I was the only one left standing. Garrett stepped forward toward the psychiatrist. "You were hired to rubber stamp a fraudulent diagnosis for a financial conspiracy. Put your hands behind your back." Natalie was entirely unhinged. She pointed a trembling finger at Derek. "It was his fault. He made me do it. I swear to God, I did not know he killed Martha." I looked at her, my face completely impassive. You willingly fed a neurotoxic poison to a man you believed was defenseless, I replied. You laughed while you did it. You are exactly where you belong. She let out a piercing wail of despair as the agents dragged her out of the room. Then there was only Derek. The agents pulled him up, securing his hands tightly. He threw his weight forward, stumbling across the room and collapsing onto his knees right at the base of my recliner. He pressed his tear-stained face against my legs, weeping openly. "Dad, please," Derek begged, his voice cracking with absolute terror. "Please, you have to stop them. I am your only boy. You cannot let them take me to prison. I will give it all back. Please, Dad. You always fix things for me." I felt the wetness of his tears soaking through my trousers. 42 years ago, I had held this boy in my arms and promised to protect him. He had repaid that boundless love by murdering the woman who gave him life and trying to destroy my mind. I slowly reached down and placed my hand on his shoulder. He looked up at me with a pathetic glimmer of hope. He thought the father who had always bailed him out would save him from the abyss. I looked directly into his eyes, stripping away every ounce of paternal affection. My expression was a terrifying void. "You stopped being my son the day you cut the brakes on your mother's car," I said, devoid of any emotion. "Enjoy hell." The faint light of hope in his eyes was instantly extinguished. The agents hauled him to his feet. He stared at me the entire time, a broken, defeated monster being led to the slaughter. I watched them pull him through the shattered doorway and out into the cold afternoon. Over the next 6 months, the justice system moved with a swift and merciless efficiency. The mountain of digital and physical evidence Garrett and the federal agents had compiled was absolutely insurmountable. There were no lengthy trials. The digital ledgers of the offshore accounts, the toxicology reports of the poisoned food, and the recorded confessions painted a picture of premeditated evil that left the judges completely appalled. When the final sentencing day arrived, I sat in the front row of the federal courtroom. The judge handed down the maximum penalty the law allowed. For the orchestrated first-degree murder of his own mother and the attempted destruction of his father, Derek Ward was sentenced to life in a maximum security federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. He did not turn to look at me as the bailiffs led him away. He would never breathe free air again. Natalie did not fare much better. The camera footage of her laughing while actively poisoning my food sealed her fate. The jury took less than 2 hours to find her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and severe fraud. She was sentenced to 20 hard years behind bars. Detective Mitchell was stripped of his pension and sent to a federal prison. Dr. Thorne lost his medical license and was sentenced to 10 years for his role in the criminal conspiracy. The entire rotten network was dismantled and thrown into the fire. With the legal battles over, I found myself driving back down that winding road toward the cemetery. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the warm afternoon sun filtered through the green leaves of the ancient oak trees. I carried a single bouquet of yellow roses, Martha's favorite flower. I knelt beside her polished marble headstone, tracing the elegant lettering of her name. "It is over, Martha," I whispered, my voice steady and filled with a deep, resonating calm. "The monster is gone. He will never hurt anyone again." The following week, I contacted Victor and Garrett. I gave them explicit instructions to liquidate my entire estate. The remaining millions in the family trust, the money Derek had been so willing to kill for, was withdrawn. I used every single penny to establish a comprehensive legal and medical foundation dedicated to protecting the vulnerable. We named it the Martha Ward Initiative. We hired aggressive forensic accountants, private investigators, and dedicated lawyers who offer free services to elderly individuals who suspect they are being financially abused or medically manipulated by their toxic relatives. We have reclaimed stolen homes and emptied bank accounts, delivering the justice that I brought down upon my son. I lost the family I thought I had, but I found a new one in the countless people I have been able to help. I learned that true strength does not come from the blood in your veins, but from the unwavering courage to stand up against evil, even when that evil sleeps right under your own roof. Blood is never an excuse for betrayal. If someone shows you they are a monster, believe them the first time. Have you ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more stories. Until next time, protect your peace.